Imagine sitting down for Christmas dinner with 30 relatives, expecting turkey, laughter, and holiday memories. Then your mother stands up, taps her wine glass, and announces that you have two choices. Either pay for your younger sister's $93,000 dream wedding or consider yourself disowned. Before you can even respond, your father rises and says every person at the table agrees. Suddenly, 30 pairs of eyes are staring at you like you've committed a crime. What happened next turned a family celebration into a disaster nobody saw coming. And within weeks they were calling me 122 times a day begging. And before we continue, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel. It really helps us bring you more powerful stories like this. And I'm always curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments below. I love seeing just how far these stories travel. Now let's get back to the story. I always knew my younger sister was the favorite. My parents never admitted it, of course. They called it helping her more because she needed it. But somehow, every family decision revolved around Emma. Every holiday, every celebration, every crisis. If Emma wanted something, the entire family was expected to make it happen. Meanwhile, I was the responsible one. I worked hard, built my own business from scratch, paid off my student loans, and bought my house without asking anyone for help. For years, my family praised my success while quietly treating it like a shared resource. The first warning came 6 months before Christmas. Emma announced she was getting married. Everyone cheered. Mom cried. Dad opened an expensive bottle of wine. Then Emma started describing her dream wedding. A luxury venue. Designer dress. Live band. Professional videographers. Custom decorations. A guest list of nearly 300 people. The total cost? $93,000. Even her fiancé looked uncomfortable when she said it. I assumed they were joking until Mom looked directly at me and said, "Well, your sister deserves the wedding she's always dreamed about." Something about the way she said it made my stomach tighten. A few weeks later, the hints became less subtle. Mom would send venue photos. Dad would mention wedding expenses during random conversations. Emma constantly talked about how stressful budgeting was. Then one evening, Mom finally said it. "You know, with everything you've accomplished, helping your sister would mean so much to this family." I told her no. Politely. Firmly. I wasn't paying for someone else's wedding. The conversation ended awkwardly, but I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. Christmas arrived and nearly 30 relatives packed into my parents' house. The evening felt strangely rehearsed. People kept glancing at me. Whispers stopped whenever I entered a room. Then halfway through dinner, Mom stood up and tapped her glass. The room went silent. I had no idea my entire family was about to turn Christmas dinner into an ambush. For a few seconds, nobody spoke. My mother looked around the table, took a dramatic breath, and pointed directly at me. "Your sister deserves the wedding she's planned, and this family believes you should help make it happen." The room stayed silent. Then my father stood up. What he said next hit harder than Mom's speech. "Every person at this table agrees," he announced. "You owe her this." I looked around the room. My aunts. My uncles. My cousins. Even relatives I barely knew. Some avoided eye contact. Others nodded. A few actually looked angry. Like I was the one ruining Christmas. Emma sat there pretending to be embarrassed, but I noticed something. She wasn't surprised. Not even a little. This had been planned. The entire thing. The speeches. The audience. The pressure. All of it. Mom folded her arms. "So what's your answer?" I set down my fork. "I already gave you my answer." Her smile disappeared. Dad's face tightened. Emma immediately started crying. Not loud crying. Carefully controlled crying. The kind that makes everyone rush to defend you. Within seconds, relatives started talking over each other. "She's your sister. You can afford it. Family helps family. Why are you being so selfish?" I listened quietly. Then I stood up. "If everyone here thinks paying for a $93,000 wedding is reasonable," I said, "then everyone here can contribute." The room instantly went silent. Not one person volunteered. Not one. I grabbed my coat and walked out. That should have ended it. Instead, it made everything worse. The next morning, I woke up to 37 missed calls. By lunchtime, there were 62. Text messages flooded my phone. Family group chats exploded. Voicemails arrived every few minutes. Some were angry. Some were emotional. Some accused me of destroying Emma's future. 3 days later I counted everything. 122 calls. In a single day. And that was when I realized this wasn't about a wedding anymore. Something much bigger was happening behind the scenes. At first I thought my family was simply being unreasonable. Then I started paying attention. The calls weren't random. Everyone seemed to be repeating the same talking points. Emma deserves this. You've changed. Family comes first. It sounded rehearsed. Almost scripted. So instead of arguing I started digging. The first clue came from my cousin Melissa. She accidentally forwarded me a screenshot meant for someone else. It showed a family group chat I wasn't part of. The messages were eye-opening. My parents had spent weeks preparing relatives for Christmas dinner. They told everyone I had already promised to pay for part of the wedding and then suddenly backed out. That wasn't true. I had never agreed to pay a single dollar. But that wasn't the worst part. A few days later, one of Emma's wedding vendors called me directly. The woman sounded confused. She asked when I planned to transfer the remaining balance. I had no idea what she was talking about. After a long conversation, the truth finally started coming out. My parents had already signed contracts. They had already made deposits. And somehow, my name had been mentioned as the person covering the final expenses. I felt sick. They hadn't asked me. They had volunteered my money. The more I investigated, the worse it got. The wedding budget wasn't actually $93,000 anymore. It was much higher. Every month, Emma added new upgrades. More decorations. More guests. More luxury extras. At the same time I learned something else. Emma and her fiancé weren't financially stable. They were carrying significant debt. Credit cards. Personal loans. Payment plans. My parents knew all about it. In fact, they had quietly co-signed some of those obligations. Suddenly everything made sense. This wasn't just about a dream wedding. It was about avoiding a financial disaster. Then I discovered dozens of messages proving my parents had been telling completely different stories to different relatives. And that's when I stopped defending myself. I started saving evidence. Because another family gathering was coming soon. And this time I planned to arrive prepared. The family meeting was scheduled for the following Saturday. According to my mother, it was supposed to be a chance for everyone to heal and move forward. I knew exactly what it really was. Another pressure campaign. When I arrived, nearly the same relatives from Christmas were already there. The atmosphere felt strangely confident. Like everyone expected me to finally surrender. Emma sat in the center of the room. My parents stayed close beside her. The moment I walked in, Mom smiled. "I'm glad you came," she said. Dad nodded. "Let's settle this once and for all." For the next 20 minutes they repeated the same arguments. Family loyalty. Responsibility. Sacrifice. Emma even gave an emotional speech about how much the wedding meant to her. Several relatives looked genuinely moved. Then my father asked the question he'd clearly been waiting to ask. "Are you finally ready to do the right thing?" I stood up. "Actually, I am." The room immediately brightened. A few people even smiled. Then I pulled out my folder. Their smiles disappeared. I started with the screenshots. The family group chat. The messages showing my parents preparing relatives before Christmas. The false claims that I had promised money. Confused murmurs spread across the room. Then I showed vendor communications. Contracts. Deposits. Messages referencing me as the future source of payment. Without my knowledge. Without my permission. The room became very quiet. But I wasn't finished. Next came the debt records. The loans. The payment obligations. Evidence that my parents already knew the wedding couldn't be funded. Questions started flying from every direction. Relatives turned toward my parents. Then toward Emma. The entire conversation shifted. Suddenly nobody was questioning me anymore. They were demanding answers from the people who created the situation. Mom tried interrupting. Dad tried changing the subject. Neither worked. The narrative they had spent months building collapsed in less than 10 minutes. I packed my documents and stood. As I walked toward the door, arguments erupted behind me. For the first time since Christmas, nobody followed. And for the first time, I knew the truth was finally doing the talking. The fallout started almost immediately. Within 48 hours, wedding vendors began demanding answers. Payments were due. Deadlines were approaching. And suddenly, the people who had spent months assuming I would solve everything realized I wasn't coming to the rescue. The calls started again. Mom called. Dad called. Emma called. Then they called again. And again. At one point, my phone recorded 122 calls in a single day. Voicemails piled up. Some were angry. Some were desperate. Some blamed me for the situation. Not one accepted responsibility for creating it. I didn't answer. There was nothing left to discuss. Over the following weeks, relatives learned more details about what had happened. Several reached out to apologize. A few admitted they had only heard my parents' version of the story. Others quietly distanced themselves from the drama. As for the wedding, it still happened. Just not the $93,000 version. The guest list shrank. The luxury upgrades disappeared. Reality finally replaced fantasy. My relationship with my parents never returned to what it once was. But something else changed too. For the first time in years, I stopped feeling responsible for problems I didn't create. Family should be built on love, trust, and respect. The moment someone turns it into an invoice, it stops being family. And that's a lesson I'll never forget.